Even though there's people that can get sick, they've got, maybe from birth and all these things, there can still be sickness. But we're talking about that the majority of the people that are here in the world could prevent much of their diseases, many of them, all of their diseases, if they would just heed to God's book. So let's go back into Genesis. Okay, let's go to Genesis. I love this because, I just want to share as I'm turning here, I won't give, obviously, my testimony. It would take too long. We couldn't get what we really need to get done. But I started out in a Baptist church, became a Seventh-day Adventist, then I left the church completely. I just was tired of playing church, and I've said that I don't want to play church. When I came back to the Lord, I bought a Bible and I actually held it up and said, Lord, I'm going to study this thing, even if it's the most boringest book I've ever read in my life. Because even though there were stories about Daniel in the lion's den, and there was Noah and Moses and certain neat stories, I didn't understand so much of the Bible, and I wanted to, but I couldn't make it practical. So therefore, that's why we have this program. But the thing of it is, I had somebody give me a health book, because man, I was drinking 18 to 20 cups of coffee a day. Ooh. I was eating a lot of meat, a lot of cheese, probably 2 to 3 gallons of milk every single week. Of course, I was young. I was on the city basketball league, and I was on the city bowling league, and I just love sports. So I was very outgoing and exercised a lot.
And you needed all that protein.
Yeah. I didn't even know about the protein. I liked milk, and I liked that stuff. Well, anyways, my diet really was atrocious. Yeah. And so somebody gave me a health book, and I started reading about that. And then what happened was, when I gave my heart to the Lord, it's kind of funny. Actually, I was a vegetarian before I quit drinking alcohol.
Really?
Because I thought...
A healthy alcoholic, right?
Well, I thought if I quit everything else, I'd be okay. We've all said, hey, everyone's got to have a little vice, but that's not true. But when I got into the scriptures, Danny, and started realizing that God wanted to restore me, Dwight Hall, back into his image, and that part of that, it's the body, mind, and soul. They're the spirit, a physical, mental, and spiritual, that he wanted me to have a healthy body on this earth.
That's right.
So that my mind would be clear and my spiritual aptitude would be clear. And I didn't know that. I thought, I'm not going to have my body anyway in heaven if I go there. But he started training me and teaching me through the scriptures that it was important. And that's where I got back to Genesis. But that's my little story.
So God has a diet in the Bible?
You tell me.
Let's read it.
Let's read it. So go ahead. Let's start in Genesis. Genesis chapter, where is that?
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1. It's amazing, in the very first chapter. So go ahead and read that, Danny, if you've got that.
I like the fact that, in verse 26, it says, and God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Let him have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air. He wasn't hunting them and fishing and eating them at this time. They were companions.
Yes.
And so he created man, verse 27, in the image of God. He created him. And then verse 29 is a key text when it comes to health in the Bible and God's original first diet plan for his creation. And who would know better what you should eat than the one who made you?
Right.
So it says, and God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is a fruit of a tree yielding seed, to you it shall be for food or for meat, it says in one version here. So God gave an original diet in Eden, and it was produce, it was plants, it was fruit. And what I like about this is we also learned there's no fire in heaven. Or in the earth when he was making it. There was no death, there was no fire, so there was no ovens.
Yes.
And they weren't cooking the food to death and whatnot. Yeah. But I think of live, living, fresh fruit, and I got 80 fruit trees on my property.
Wow.
And one day my daughter came to me in the morning and she says, so Dad, what's for breakfast? And I said, well, let's look around the garden. And I said, there's plums and there's peaches and there's apricots and there's nectarines. And she said, I want that big red peach over there. And it was a strawberry freestone that's got the red bursting around the seed if you open it up. And I pulled the limb down to her face and I said, she starts to pluck it. I said, no, Just leave it there. And she took a big bite off the tree. I said, now that's live food, honey. So God's trying to preserve us alive.
Yeah, right.
He put us in a garden. We were created in His image and His likeness, and He gave us living food.
Amen.
With the enzymes and the proanthocyanidins and the vitamins and the minerals and the trace elements and the pure water that's in them. They're life-sustaining nutrients in that food that's no cholesterol, high fiber, high energy, and who doesn't like a peach?
And I was just thinking, I was just sharing that with me that, well, I have to say I like peaches. Yeah. But he must have given that diet after Adam and Eve sinned, right?
No.
So you're telling me that he had a diet before there was any sin. In other words, they had these glorified bodies when they were created,
yes,
with no sin, and he still had an owner's manual for their health.
That's right.
I mean, a lot of people...
That's very important.
Think about that, because people will say, well, it doesn't matter about my body today. I've got this sinful body, and I'm going to get rid of it. When I go to heaven, I'll have another one. Yet God, in the very beginning, before there was sin...
Right.
One of the very first, I mean, it's Genesis chapter 1 that he says, hey, I have a health plan for you so that your mind can stay clear,
right,
and your spiritual aptitude can stay sharp because of my diet.
Absolutely. You know what's important too is to realize this. If you went to a zoo, they give a diet. They feed certain foods to certain animals. Okay, so the zebra, they don't bring ground round.
Yeah.
Okay, they may give it to the lion,
right,
but they don't give it to the lamb. They don't give it to the
zebra,
to the zebra or to the horses
yeah,
or whatever. And so it doesn't say God put you in a slaughterhouse.
Right.
It doesn't say put you in a meat packing plant. He put you in a garden. And I think, you know, I said this to you yesterday. If you just look at your hand, and you put
I like this.
You like this?
I like this. So go ahead.
If you take your hand, God created me. I take my hand and I hold it out to you here, and I see, and you can do this at home right now, every finger's a different length. But if you turn it, they're all the same, perfectly designed for picking apples and oranges and peaches and plums. So God designed us to eat produce.
Yes.
And you look at the anatomy, you look at the diet He gave in Eden, and like you said, this was before sin.
That's right.
Very important.
Well, and I was thinking again, as you were saying that He knew the very best plan when there was no sin.
Right.
Now I know that, you know, of course, studying and getting into just maybe a little bit deeper, but our bodies were never really made for animal products.
Right.
And of course, we're not cutting anyone down. I'm, you know, on the air about animal products. What we're trying to do here is make the Bible come alive. We're not here to offend anybody. We're not here to cut anybody down. But you know, the thing of it is the Bible is so plain, and God wants us to be what? Happy.
Right.
He wants us to be spiritually and mentally understanding. We're living in the last days.
Right.
I mean, even people that don't go to church say, I mean, I know I have a lot of friends that don't go to any church, and they will come up to me and they'll say, Dwight, I can tell you one thing. I don't know if I believe about all your religion, but I can tell you something's wrong in this earth. I mean, I've never seen it like this in my entire life. And God has yet had prepared for us, even in these last days, how to be healthy, how to be well. And I think that's what we need to understand, is that what we're doing here in these programs is taking some biblical principles and making them practical in your lives and our lives, so that why? So that we can be more adapted and more ready for what's about to take place.
Right.
Because if we're not physically ready, how will we be mentally or spiritually ready?
You know, it's very important you said that, because this isn't about judging people.
Right.
This isn't about condemning anybody because they eat an animal product or not. I think what this is about is trying to teach you God's plan and using science to support that a plant-based diet is the healthiest for you today. In fact, I like to say it this way. This is in Isaiah chapter 65.
Okay.
It says in verse 17 of Isaiah 65, "For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered nor come to mind." And in verse 21 it says, "And they shall build houses and inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards, and they shall eat the fruit of them. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat." And verse 25 says, "And the wolf and the lamb shall feed together, and the lion shall eat straw like the bullock." And now that's interesting, because we find there's no more death in the earth made new. Animals are eating straw. There's no killing.
Well, the lion.
The lion
is eating
right
straw,
there, which is a carnivore.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, I want to tell a little story. I was walking once with a Pentecostal minister friend of mine, and he's looking at me, and we're talking about health. And I said, I know what you're thinking. And he goes, what? I said, you're thinking I'm trying to eat my way into heaven. And he goes, well, and I put my arm around him, and I said, you know, brother, I'm just getting used to the diet I'm going to eat when I get there.
Amen.
And
Amen.
he said, that's pretty good.
Probably said touche.
He did. He did. But